In this video, I'm going to be giving you a pretty detailed guide on how you can progress easily in the early game in AOPG. Now, AOPG has a ton of stuff in this game. Out of all the One Piece games I've played, this one probably has the most things just that you can do. Except for like maybe Blocks Fruits. That game's a lot older though, so it makes sense. But we'll get way more to that in the actual video. So if you haven't already and you do enjoy this video, please drop a quick like and subscribe. It is free and it does help out the channel. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so when you first load into the game, your game is going to look something like this. Mine's gonna have a bit more stuff on it, mainly because I've been playing the game for a while now. So I have like a bunch of money, health, a big old bounty, stuff like that. But when you first load it, you probably have this daily spin thing. It has a few rewards you can get. You have gems, fruit, you get some boosts, and a daily spin. I will say probably the best thing you can get early game is the EXP, money boost, or a random fruit. Unless you get invisible, which is basically useless. Now, I know there is a lot on the screen right now, but most of it you can ignore, and I'll show you what you have to focus on. Now, we're currently in this menu right here, the spinning menu. That's what this one is. There's also a secondary menu for titles. I'll show you what these are later and how you can get more of them. But if you close this menu, there's only one more button on this top area you have to pay attention to, and that is the free rewards. Technically, you can get 10,000 if you follow this, but not super necessary. It's only 10,000. So closing that and then closing this. None of the other buttons are worth looking at. Now moving over to underneath your chat box, you have 3 buttons. The top one, fruit shop. There's a lot going on in this menu, but ignore most of this. There's only really 2 buttons you have to pay attention to. The first one is the gem shop. It has a few different accessories and like weapons and a race reroll. There's also a secondary page of items you can buy. I'll talk about more of this later when I talk about accessories. And the other menu is the storage. You have various different things you can store. You have one free slot you can store for an extra item. So you have the one you have on, equipped, and then you have the free one. And there's various different storages. One for race, one for support style. Next one is for title, and then fruits. This is just so you can have like more than one item because you can only really have one title equipped at a time. I currently have Sun God equipped. But some of these other ones are really nice to have too, so you can store them also. And you can unlock these other 3 slots on all these pages by paying for the Game Pass, which moves on to the next one, which is the Game Pass button. There's a bunch of Game Passes in the game. There's a lot of Game Passes in this game, but there's only really a few that really matter if you're looking to spend Robux. Now, I will say the best Game Pass in the entire game is the Infinite Times Speed Drop. I own this. There is a title in the game called Clover, which gives you the exact same thing. They do not stack, and they do not affect anything above 5% apparently for drop rate. They're really only good for like the 1% items, but trust me, you're gonna want it. I will say that it does cost 2,500 Robux, so if you can't afford that, just use the Clover title. It's basically the exact same thing. It just makes you deal less damage because these titles otherwise give a really big damage boost. Now, there's a few other ones that are good. You can buy the VIP Game Pass right here, which gives you 10% more experience, cash, and apparently it also boosts drop chances, but I'm not sure if it stacks. I'm honestly not sure. You can also buy storage, which is what unlocks all of these slots. And at least for late game, if you're spinning a lot of titles, the skip spin animation is nice. Increased upgrade chances is also nice, but that's mainly for late game. I only bought it to make videos faster. And then there is one more for ×2 raid points, which I'll show raids later. It's more of a medium end game thing though. So only really buy that if you plan to do a lot of grinding on raids. But that's all there is for this menu. Next menu is the gem shop, which is not to be confused with this gem shop. They have 2 completely different items, and these items in this menu right here are way better. They are much more expensive though. All of these gem shop items cost gems, of course. Your default cap of gems you can have is 30,000. You can increase it with items I'll explain later. But I do highly recommend buying these if you can. They give massive boosts to your stats, which makes it easier to level up. And also just kill things. And they're massive boosts. To the point where even these 2 items right here, I still use, even though I have every item in the game. I mean, at least all the good items, of course. It's a very good gem shop. And the last menu is the storage V2, which is able to store Vegapunk suits and artifacts, which you can have artifact chests. These are very late game items though, the suits at least are. You might get lucky with an artifact chest. I'll show you how you can get like one later, once we get to that. Also, all this is subject to change. I have seen things saying they're going to change the items in this shop. So it might change at some point. They might add more. They might take stuff away. But as of now, the items in here are very, very good. So I don't think that's ever going to change. The stuff in here is always going to be very helpful. Now, moving on to the bottom of the screen, you have your hotbar. Yours probably looks like this, but it's probably going to look something like this when you get later into the game. Now, you can press the inventory button, and that'll pop up this menu. There's nothing too complicated about this. It's just every item you have on you. From accessories, which you can press this button to see exclusively. You can press this button just to see your fruits. This one to see your weapons, from guns to swords. And then this one is the miscellaneous. You have like upgrade scrolls and chests and stuff like that. You can also turn on and off your accessories here, but I have none on right now, so it doesn't do anything. But this game does have various different things you can wear on your avatar, which you can see all in the hotbar. You have a slot for support styles. I'll show you how you can get one decently early game in a little bit. Then you have your fighting style, which normally goes into the second slot. Then you have your guns in the third slot. Fourth slot is your sword, and then your fifth slot is your fruits. And then I just have my suit on here. This is my Vegapunk suit. These give a nice little boost, but yet again, very late game. Of course, if you don't have one of these items, like let's say you don't have a gun, then it is going to sort like this, where it's the sword on the third and your fruit on the fourth. But that is the hotbar. And moving on to the last area, we have our stat menu. We have tokens, health, energy, our main cache, and then gems, and then our race at the bottom. I'm currently using cyborg. Yours most likely says human, though. You can change your race in the game by going to the fruit shop and then going to gem shop, and then there, you can buy one right here for 500 gems. I'll get more into that later too. But if we go ahead and press this menu button, it pops up a lot of buttons. There's only really like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 of these you have to look at, but I'll go through all of them. This top one right here is a trading menu. This is for trading other players. This other one is a teleport menu to teleport to any island, but you have to pay for it. It's 1,000 Robux, I think. You don't need to buy it. There's a free way to see where islands are, which I'll also show later. Next is just another button to pop up at the fruit shop, so ignore that. This one is for codes. This one is for a cruise, which there is a nice little boost you can get. The max you can get is a 1.5 times experience buff and a 1.5 times cash buff. So if you have a friend that plays, have them invite you to their crew and you can get a nice little boost. Next button is for spawning in boats. You buy them and then you can press spawn while facing some water and you'll be able to spawn one in. I never really used it. This button right here shows your stats. As you can see, I'm currently maxed out at 10,000 per, 70,000 total. This is the most important menu in the game for early game. I'll show you how you can raise this decently fast. It will take a while though. Then you have your settings menu. Nothing in here is too crazy. I do recommend turning off PvP if it's not already off. Turn on autofill quest slots. Turn off screen shake. And there's also a bunch of other stuff here. You can also turn on auto vote replay, which is nice. And damage display. So that way you can see how much damage you're dealing. And for the last 2 menus, you have this one, which I think is a fruit tracker. I don't own it, so I never have to use it. And then this one just shows active quests. So you can see the task thing right here. But it's kind of hidden behind this because they haven't like adjusted this ever. But the only really ones you have to pay attention to is this menu for your stats, and that's honestly about it. But there you go. That is everything with the GUI on the screen. Now let's show you how to get started. Now, the first thing you want to do, and I know this is a pretty big island, but you want to head over to these houses over here. And you want to talk to this NPC right here. Go ahead and accept his quest. And you want to fight these bandits. Now, you're going to be able to kill them very slowly. But just walk over there with your melee and punch them until your stats go up higher. Whenever you use your stats, or just use any of your items, you'll see that your stats go up very slowly of whatever you're using. So if you're using like a melee, you're going to raise your strength. If you're using fruit, you're going to raise your fruit. If you're using guns, you're going to raise your guns. Same with swords. If you're taking damage, you're raising your defense. If you're using anything that uses energy, which is literally everything, your stamina is going to go up. And there's also hockey. As soon as you unlock hockey, it'll go up a lot faster. But early on, it's probably not going to move at all. Now, let's say you got lucky with a fruit. I'm going to answer this question because I was confused at first when I was testing on an alt. But when you first get a fruit, you legitimately can't use any of the abilities because you need to get your fruit stat up before you can actually use it. So how are you supposed to get your fruit stat up if you can't use your fruit? And that is what the quests come in. When you complete quests, it gives you various different things. The most important thing it gives you is money. You're going to need a lot of money for these next few steps. But it also gives you experience to every single one of your stats, even if you aren't using it. So if you complete a quest and you're just using your strength, you're going to notice that all of your stats go up by a little bit of experience. And the harder the quest, the more experience it is. I'll show you where I elect to grind, but there's going to be a lot of AFK recommendations I'm going to give you. If you can't AFK, just do it manually. You can adjust where you grind on your own, because I will be straight up upfront with you right now. There is no set guide on what order you should do things in this game, outside of like the island order, for example, because there is no set levels. There's no like, you want to be level 100 to go to the second island. There's no levels in this game. It's purely just stats, which I honestly think is a pretty unique idea. I don't know about you, but I kind of like it, instead of every game being the same. So a lot of this is going to be me saying, once you feel like you can move on, try moving on. And if you can't, just come back. That's all I can really recommend. I'll show you the order of the islands. I'll show you which quests I liked for grinding, and just some major steps I recommend you doing. So just keep that in mind. But once you do a few rounds of these bandits, you're going to feel yourself being stronger, and fighting them is going to be a lot easier. Once you feel like you can move on, obviously I'm already saying once you feel like it, you can move on doing quests. Now, I didn't end up ever fighting the noobs, and I've only fought the monkeys about once. I moved directly onto fighting the gorilla boss, which there's little markers, but I'll show you where he spawns, which is over here. And once you kill him, he's much easier because it's only one enemy instead of having to kill like 5 or 10. And he'll also give you more experience per quest and also per kill. And eventually you're going to want to move on to where you are fighting the bandit leader who you can find over here. Basically just directly over there from spawn. There's the quest. He's right here. Now, once you get to the point where you're fighting him, you're going to be fighting him for a little bit. If you're lucky, you have a ×2 money, because there's a few different things you want to try to save up for and buy. Now, the cheapest thing you can buy is if you head over to this NPC. And by the way, these locations NPCs might be different at some point. I have looked at old videos and they were in completely different positions. They like moving stuff around this game. I don't know when they're going to do it, but they might do it at some point. But if you talk to this NPC, he wants to sell you an island tracker for 50,000 cash. Now, don't buy this right away. Buy this once you're really wanting to start exploring the game. Save your money for other things. But once you buy it, it is literally a tracker to every single island in the game and every single sea. It only has the ones for the sea you're in. But once you go to different seas like C2 or C3 or the Multiverse Sea, which I'll get into those in a little bit, you can do any island you want. Like, say you want to go over to Clamtown, it tells you where to go. Just follow the arrows and you'll go directly to it. Now, a lot of the islands in this game, and the first sea at least, are super close together. As you can see, you can already see 2 islands there. There's a few over there. There's one basically right behind this island. But this is still a very nice thing to have, because some of them are pretty far away. And for example, the Raid Kingdom, a very nice island to go to at some point. It's super far away though. Oh yeah, by the way, this menu is in no specific order. Like, the starter island, the very first island in the game, is near the bottom of the menu. And the option right below it is one of the harder islands in the first sea. So like, really no specific order. That's why I'm going to show you the island order in a little bit. But that's the first thing you want to buy. The next thing you want to buy is you want to head over here to this bridge, go up it, and there's 2 different NPCs over here. The first one is this one right here. This guy sells you quest scrolls. Now, if you were paying attention earlier, when I was claiming quests, I was able to claim 5 at a time. Now, by default, that's only 1 quest at a time, but you can buy more of them for a decent amount of money. The first one, though, is 500,000 cash, where makes sure you can accept 2 quests, and each one you claim, and make sure you put it on your hotbar and then click on it to actually claim it fully once you buy it. I can't buy one now, as you can see, because I already have the maximum amount, but the maximum amount you can get is 5 quests in total. And the total amount of money needed to buy all of them is around 5 million. So keep that in mind. This is the single best upgrade you could ever do in the game. It literally makes the grind 5 times faster. Every single one you get, it duplicates how much money you get by the amount of quests. And it also duplicates the amount of experience. So it's very nice. You can like basically kill like 5 bandit leaders at the exact same time. Now you can also go ahead and talk to Sanji here, Tresso. And for 500k, he will sell you a fighting style, which is much, much, much better than the melee. But I will say that it is nowhere near the best in the game. But you still definitely want to buy it. It'll help out so much, especially if you don't already have a fruit, which you most likely don't. If you do, congratulations, you're incredibly lucky. Unless it's invisible, then I'm very sorry. You can also buy an upgraded version of the fighting style for 20 million, but it really isn't that much better, so save your money for other things, like buying fruits, for example. But yet again, that is entirely up to you and what you want to do. Now, there is one more thing I recommend saving up for, but it's not on this island. I'm going to fly over to it, But if you head over towards Marineford, which you can go to via your island tracker, here is Marineford right here. And if you just go directly behind New Alabasta, which is this giant desert island, there is this island right here with a giant pillar on it. If you can fly up or like do the double jumps all the way up, it might require a decent amount of energy. But the very top, there is an old man here. If you talk to him, you can buy Iron Spirit, which is basically hockey. Of course, I have the maxed out version, so it's a little bit extreme, but the hockey gives a nice little damage boost, and you're definitely going to want this because this is like one of the easiest upgrades you can get. It's 700k, and it gives a 20% damage boost by default. You could upgrade it later, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. I did it in other videos, but I do recommend buying this as soon as you can because a 20% damage increase is massive when you're this early. Okay, back to the first island. So let's say you want to move on from this island. Now, where should you go? I am going to go in order from the weakest island all the way up to the strongest island, but I will be showing off different things on different islands that I recommend you doing or just neat little things that you might want to know. Now, the first island you're probably going to want to go to is if you head to the back of the island, you can head over to Clam Town. This one right here. Back corner closest to the starter island, there is Zoro. If you talk to Zoro, he will sell you his swords. Now, he sells 3 different versions of it. The first one is 100k, the second one is 700k, and the third one is 5 million. Now, it doesn't give any boosts, but it is nice for damage. So if you do want to use it, you can. But they are definitely the weakest swords in the game, but they are still pretty good. Much better than the default melee. And you might be able to use the skills alongside Sanji's fighting style. So more attacks means more damage. That's nice. The next island is the Citrus Village. And this island isn't too special. There's nothing new here, but it does have this quest right here. And it's also the first island in the game where upon killing the enemies, there's actually a chance to get gems. So it's a pretty good early gem grind, but trust me, it really isn't that much. So unless you're AFKing it, it probably isn't too worth grinding here for gems. And there we go. We just got 2 gems. Yeah, it really doesn't give that much. Now, the next one is the Desert Island. This island I personally very much enjoy. There isn't too much here, but if you fight the boss back here, Alligator, you can cheese his fight pretty easily by standing up here. So you can get a lot of experience very fast from grinding this NPC. In addition, he also drops also an accessory called the Golden Hook. The only item in the first sea that goes in that slot for accessories. Yet again, I'll get into that later. Now, Marine Headquarters is very, very special as of now. First of all, it has one of the best accessories you can get in C1. This is not counting gem shops or raids, by the way. From Whitebeard, he is pretty difficult to kill, though. At least I found him difficult at the time. I mean, now I can just, like, one-shot him. But if you set your spawn on this island, then all you really have to do is just keep respawning and punching and dealing damage to him, because dying has no penalty for drops. So, a nice little item to get. But if you head over here, this is a brand new NPC, Wandering Straw Hat, for attacking Marine HQ Q-Raid. This is brand new, so this is going to work as a tutorial for people that want to know how to do it. But also, me showing it off to you as something that you definitely want to do, because these things are actually very weak. These NPCs only have about 200,000 health each, and actually I think these right here have like less than 100k. And there's 3 different sets of Marines. If you kill the third set, there they are, I'll go ahead and kill them. It'll give you gems and also a fruit. As you can see, I just got the ice fruit. This is actually, this is the easiest way to get a fruit right now. It's just this first set. Now, the next set of enemies is going to be 2 random bosses. They average about 200,000 health each, so they're pretty weak overall. So once you can deal about 200k health and also not die to their hits, then you're set. You can also see I just got a chop through from that. But once you kill them, go ahead and talk to the mysterious fishman, and they'll teleport you over to the next boss, which I think is always the same one. Yes, Light Admiral. He has about 300k health, so not too much more difficult, but he moves around a lot. And upon killing him, a key will spawn somewhere in the map. It is kind of small though, so it'll be a little slow walking around trying to find it. I found one over here, one over there, and one underneath the podium. It looks like there's one on top of it right here. Yeah, here we go. Now go ahead and collect that, and then talk to the pirate inside of the jail cell, and he'll give you some gems. Now, the next NPC is the hardest boss, having 4 to 5 million health, so be careful about him. He might do a lot of damage too. He is also Aokiji. He might also drop permission scroll. I'm not entirely sure though. You can get scrolls for like V2s and stuff like that. There's a lot of drops, but it's also brand new, so I don't know much about it. But this is definitely probably the best thing to run if you're not AFKing, because it gives a decent amount of gems. As you can see, let's run through this round real quick. We have 15,500, and upon completing this first room, we got an extra 200 gems. That's a pretty large amount. Upon completing the next room with the 2 bosses, we get like an 800 more gems, and we also got a quake fruit. That's actually really good. You can probably get yourself a really good fruit here pretty easily. Now this third boss, I don't think he gives gems himself. He doesn't give gems, but upon flying the key and talking to the pirate, he will give you a nice, looks like 1,000 gems. So that's very good. You just gotta run up to that part like 30 times, and then you can buy like whatever you want. And then this last NPC, let's see how many he drops. About another 1,000, like 400. Pretty good, but he's also pretty difficult. Next island is the Straw Hat Island. Now the only real reason to come here is if you fight the Luffy boss back here. He has 2 drops. First of all, he drops his hat, which is pretty decent. But if you are using the rubber fruit, which I do highly recommend trying to get that as fast as possible if you can. I'll tell you why later, but you can get the Gear 2 version of rubber if you're using rubber to kill him. It's like a 6% chance. I highly recommend doing it if you have it. Now, the next island is the Ice Island. This is a very important island, because this is probably one of the best places to grind in the first sea. Because if you have a very large AoE attack, which I'll show you a really good one you can get later, if you just accept this guy's quest and fight the train marines, they are literally right there. So if you have a wide enough attack, you can just attack from here, kill them, and get a ton of experience. I actually grinded experience here for a while. You can also, these tokens I mentioned earlier, you can use them exclusively on this NPC right here. Now, there's a few different things you can get. You get tokens, which is the currency. You can get gems here, which is very, very nice. Poneglyphs, which is helpful for later. I'll show them what you can use them for. Item chests, which give you various different items. Accessory chests, which can give you various different accessories, some of which are very, very good. Same with the weapon chest, just with weapons. There's also a turkey staff, which isn't that good, but it's rare, so it's kind of nice to have. And also, here's one of the first ways to get an artifact chest. There's a 1% chance, very, very rare. Probably not going to get it. This is more of a mid to end game menu anyway. Next one is the Raid Kingdom. I highly recommend going here eventually, but they are kind of tanky. Because once you come here, if you head up onto this rock right here, talk to this NPC, this is the quest NPC for the island, there's various different bosses you can fight here. You can track any of them, and they all have a 1% chance to drop a raid canister. Now, this is going to be how you get your first support style. It's how I got my first one, and this support style is very good. I showed it earlier, but it gives a decent damage boost, speed boost, or damage reduction, depending on the one you get. The best one you can get is the Flashing Rogue, though. It looks like this, guys. It's also the most common one, so you have a high chance to get it. Now, a few more islands. Next one is New Alabasta, which I, never came here until super late into the game, because the only reason to really come here is to head over here and talk to the Poneglyph merchant. If you give him a Poneglyph, he will increase your gem cap by 1,000. Default is 30,000, so it's 31,000, 32,000 for each Poneglyph, which is nice. Really only necessary for late game, though. It's just nice to know. Now, this island, I also like to call it the Raid Island, but on this island is a bunch of different raids. Now, most of these you can ignore. There's only a few you should really pay attention to. That being the Mihawk raid, which is how you can get Mihawk sword. It's a very, very good early game sword. You can also upgrade it for a few thousand gems to make it even better, to the point where it's also, I highly recommend it because it gives a 1.7 times damage boost once you upgrade it with gems. I'll just skip ahead, but you can do that over at Rogue Town, this island right here, by talking to this NPC right here. It's 30,000 gems, and it's probably one of the single best upgrades in C1. But there are still better ones, by the way, for that upgrade type. So keep that in mind. Back at the Teleport Island, though, a few other things you can run is there is the Thriller Bark Maze, but it's pretty difficult for C1, so you probably won't end up being able to run it. Plus, the accessories in the gem shop are better, so instead, I recommend grinding the Marines raid. But if you run the Marines raid, it has a few different things you can get. First of all, you get yourself a lot of gems, but there's also a chance to get an item called a Permission Scroll. This is how you can get Gear 5, which is the single best fruit you can get in C1. I highly recommend, if you can get the rubber fruit, get the Permission Scroll from the Marines raid. It might be a little bit rare. You can only get it from the Aokiji boss at the end of the raid. So as soon as you're able to grind it, I recommend grinding it, especially if you have the rubber fruit. You can also get other versions of the rubber fruit once you own it by running the Gear 4 dungeon to get Gear 4 Bounce Man, which is also very, very good. I actually got this one before Gear 5, so it's very good to run this raid. And an NPC over at the Wilderness Island, which we can see in the distance, gives you Gear 4 Snake Man, which is also very, very good. And you can watch my Gear 5 video if you want on it to watch me do it, but I highly recommend doing it. It literally carried me all the way to the end of the game. I did not swap fruits until the very end of the game. The last notable raid here is the... Where's it at? Yeah, the Law raid. You actually have to defeat this raid to get access to C2. I'll get more into that later, though. I guess also one last thing, there is the challenge raid right here. Each round you complete gives you points. The later the rounds, the more points it gives. You can use these points to spin to get lots of different items. I'm not going to get into these items, but just letting you know, like, all of these items are pretty good, but also super, super rare, so I don't recommend grinding this early game. But there are a lot of good videos on YouTube uploaded by other YouTubers on how you can AFK this. That's how I got so many points. But yeah, again, this is more of a medium to late game event. The next island we want to go to is the Rogue Town. We were here earlier, but there's a few different reasons why you want to come here. Title Merchant. This is where you can buy title spins. There's 750 gems per spin. So that's how you can get better titles. Next NPC is the Merchant, where you can get devil fruits. It costs 25 million per spin, though. So that's pretty expensive, especially in the early game. If you want to try to get a fruit, you can try saving up 25 million. And for the last NPC that you want to notice here is the Gem Merchant. This is how you can upgrade various different fruits. The only one you should really be upgrading, though, if you can help it, is you want to try to get a hold of the Dark Fruit. I've never used it, but apparently if you buy the very last upgrade, the total cost of it all being 30,000 gems, it can make your stats increase by double. So it's basically a ×2 increase to experience when you use the very last move. That's what I've been told, though. I'm pretty sure it's true. So the two best fruits you can get is Gear 5 Luffy or the Dark Fruit as a version 2. I personally used Gear 5 Luffy, though, because he has a very fun fruit to use, and he also just does a ton of damage, being the 10th strongest fruit in the game currently. But for the very, very last island we're going to is the Dawn Island. This island is how you can get to C2, 3, and also the Multiverse C by talking to these NPCs. Now, if you want to get to C2, you talk to this guy, and the only way you can get to C2 is by having, I've heard both numbers, is by either having 5,000 total stats, not like an individual stat. This number right here being above 5,000. It might be 7,000, but either way, get that many stats, and also you have to have defeated in the Law raid, which really isn't that difficult if you already have the stat number. Especially if you have Gear 5 or Dark or anything like that. Okay, so now that we've shown all the different islands, I want to go ahead and talk about accessories. Now, there is one major thing you should know about accessories, and that is there are a lot of them in this game, but there's only really a few you can get in C1. Now, there's like 3 different categories of hats you can get. There is the ones you can get from the normal bosses around C1, from like islands. The second type of hats is the ones from the gem shop, which will be the best you can get on the C. And the third type is the ones you can get from raids, which I'm not going to get into because they really aren't worth grinding for, because by the time you actually can, you're just going to have the gem shop items anyway. And one more thing you should know is that there is a lot of different slots for the items, and all these items fall under one specific slot. Those slots being hats, shirts, arms, capes, and pants, and also waist. They can only have one accessory per slot, so you can't have like 2 hats on, but you can have a hat and a shirt, for example. Now, going from worst to best on the hats, the first item you can get is the Marine hat from the Marines on Ice Island. It's not too bad. The next is the horns from Punk Hazard. You can get them from the Gas Clown. Next is the straw hat from Luffy from Luffy's Island, the Straw Hat Island. Pretty good strength buff and defense. The next is from Maple Village, killing Usopp. He drops his sniper hat, which is plus 100 gun and 40 hockey, but I don't even have the hat. It's not good. Don't get it unless you're collecting. And for the last item is the White Mustache, giving a ton of strength and sword stats from this boss right here, being the best hat you can get from like a boss in first C, basically. So very nice to have. So we'll go ahead and put it on and have the extra stat boost to show it. Now, next we're going to show shirts. The first item being the Rago drums, giving a nice fruit buff, and you can get it from this boss on Sky Island. And the only other one being the Candy Scarf from this guy on Phoenix Island. It's pretty good too for sword, and it's only 10 more fruit stats than Rego Drum, so it's a nice drop to get. Next slot being capes. The weakest one of the two is the Flamingo Cape from the Heavenly Demon on Flamingo Island. 50 fruit, 40 hockey. The only other one being the Marine Cape from the Magma Admiral, giving 80 strength and 45 fruit. Those are the only two capes in C1. And for the last slot for items that are actually available in C1 is the arm slot Golden Hook from the Alligator Boss on Desert Island, giving 90 sword stats, which is actually the last accessory you can get in C1. There is no accessories in C1 for pants or waist, so keep that in mind. So if you have all four of these items, those items being White Mustache, Candy Scarf, Marine's Cape, and the Golden Hook, these will be your bonus stats. Not that high, but also better than nothing. So if you want something to grind while grinding up stats, maybe grind those 4 bosses until you get those drops. That's the best thing I can tell you. You could also grind the other individual drops if you want to. I personally went through each individual item, except for the sniper hat, of course, just to have something to do while grinding stats. But moving on to the next accessories, being the gem shop item. I'm going to show you the stats of these hats, and I'll wear them, but I do not recommend buying these. Buy the ones in here instead. Now, here's the 4 different hats. We have the Sea Beast Armor, the Royal Cape, the Ace's Hat, and the Ronin Tusk. Now, you can wear 3 of these items at a time because they all take their own slots. The Sea Beast Armor taking the same slot as the Candy Scarf, but also being way better. I mean, look at those stats. That is insane. So we'll go ahead and wear that to replace it. The next item being the Royal Cape, giving also very, very good stats. This replaces the Marine Cape, obviously. And then you have the Ronin Tusk and the Ace's Hat that both overtake the exact same slot, being the White Mustache, being way better. The one you probably want to buy, though, is the Ace's Hat, unless you're using sword, which then you want to buy the Ronin Tusk. But you're most likely using fruit or strength, so Ace's Hat. You can see the stats there being very, very good. But all these items are way, way weaker than anything from the gem shop. By the way, our current setup right now, if you bought all the items from this menu, would be the Golden Hook, Sea Beast Armor, Ace's Hat, and Royal Cape. If you buy all of these, the only really item you have to grind in C1 is the Golden Hook, being the only item that does not get replaced so far. But it's about to from this gem shop. Now, there's 6 different items you can get, but you really only have to buy 4 of them. Now, the 4 I would recommend buying is the Golden Boots first, because this is going to be your first boot item. And as you can see, it is very, very good. It replaces nothing you've gotten so far in C1. So definitely going to wear those. There you go. That's what they look like. So very, very good stats. And there's also the Stone Gauntlets is what you're going to want to buy next. As you can see, very, very good stats. All these items are very expensive, though, as you can see. Like 18,000, 16,000. That's like half your gem cap at the beginning of the game. But they are worth buying because the Stone Gauntlets are the best melee glove item. They do replace the Golden Hook, though, so just replace those. As you can see, our stats are now way higher. Very, very good. Now, the next sets is you have the Golem Chestplate and the Samurai Cloak. These both take the exact same slot, but I do recommend buying the Golem Chestplate. For the main reason that it gives a ton of defense, which you're going to definitely want early game because it gives you way more health so you can survive more battles. Also, a ton of strength. This does replace the Sea Beast Armor, so we'll be replacing that one. I use this item for a very, very long time. The Samurai Cloak is also nice to get if you're using sword, I guess, but I just recommend buying the Golem Chestplate. I only own it as a completionist thing. And for the last slot, you have the Pirate Hunter's Bandana and the Igneous Helmet, both being very, very good, but I'd also recommend buying both of them. First of all, the Igneous Helmet is just better for the early game. It gives way more defense, as you can see. It also gives strength and fruit stats, which you're most likely using one of those. So if you wear that one, our stats are very, very high. But I do also recommend buying the Pirate Hunter's Bandana because it is the single best damage hat for sword that go on your hat slot. Both of these replacing Ace's Hat, by the way. You can see the stats there when we have the Pirate Bandana on, but we're going to be using the Igneous Helmet because it is way better for defense, which is very, very helpful in the early game. It also gives a lot of strength and fruit stats. So as you can see, our stats are way, way higher. So that is the best accessories you can use in C1. If you have the max C1 accessories from the gem shop, this is what you're going to look like. This is where your stats are going to look like. It's the Multiverse Sea. Let's head there. This is an entirely different world. Now, upon coming here, there's a lot of different things you can do here. A lot of the best things in the game can also be found here. You want to head over to the Jiu-Jitsu Island. So that way you can unlock the Sukuna fighting style, which is like the best fighting style in the game. Other than Cyborg, which is late game. But you can get this one early game, so it's actually better, technically. Now, all you gotta do to get it is you talk to this NPC right here. You talk to Sukuna in the middle of the city. And he's gonna ask you to get 20 fingers. I'll pop up a map of all the spawn locations now. All of the dots are where they spawn in at. One spawns every 10 minutes, but there is one boss you do have to kill though, at least one. That being this boss right here, the King of Curses. Does a ton of damage, especially for early game, and he has 250 million health. But if you can melt through that health eventually, you just have to kill him once, and that's all you gotta do. There's no drop needed. Just kill him once. There is also the Maharaga boss right here. He has 100 million health, I think. So he's a bit easier to kill. So same situation with him. Just kill him once. And then you can unlock one of the best fighting styles in the game. The main reason why you want this fighting style is, first of all, it's just super, super strong. It's gonna be stronger than anything you've used in the game so far, including Gear 5 if you have it. And that is because of the one attack World Cut. This thing does a ton of damage, but it also has an insane amount of range. It is literally gonna cut the entire world. Not literally, but it has a ton of range anyway. And if you unlock the King of Curses buff, if you press U to activate it, first of all, it gives you a nice cool little aura, but it does give you a 1.7 times a global damage boost to everything you have equipped. Even if you're using a fruit, it gives the same boost to that one. It also boosts your healing by twice, and it increases your speed by 1.8x. So it's a nice little speed boost. You also have access to a domain. If you press G, whatever this thing is like doing its animation is dealing damage, but it also gives an additional 1.4 times damage boost to Sukuna itself. But it is so worth the time spent. That is literally the only reason to come here, by the way. So let's go back to C1. But I do still recommend trying to get Gear 5 if you can. If you don't really want to do that, then just try to get Dark Fruit and evolve it using 30,000 gems. But I will be straight up front with you that there really isn't too much you can actually do in C2 that is going to give you better things than what Multiverse C gives you, and also the gem shop accessory wise. There's basically nothing to do in C2 except gem grind. But if you do want to see a tutorial on how you can do like mid to end game, that being C2 and C3, let me know. I'll see what I can do. But I hope this one helped you. If you have any additional questions to ask in the comments, I might not respond. Other people might respond, might even correct stuff I say in this video. And one last reminder, stuff is always subject to change. So keep that in mind. That's why this is more of a loose guide on what to do than an exact guide.